testing, 1, 2. Okay. We'll wait a couple minutes.
Yeah. I actually
All right, let's get started. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. As always, we're very, very thankful for this blessed opportunity to have the MIFA program here at St. Mark's Church, and it's always a blessing to have Jonathan with us. Jonathan's been with us for maybe over 10 years or so we're very happy. We had our financial meeting 2 weeks ago on the process of how to afford college, and now we have the college admission, which I think is very important, and I hope that we can pay attention because I always say it starts from 7th grade, or it starts from 1st grade, but it starts from 7th grade to 8th grade, and then it counts in 9th grade. So We want to welcome Jonathan and thank him and thank the whole MIFA program for always supporting St. Mark's Church and our youth and the whole the Coptic community here in Massachusetts. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Thank you. I was telling Father Samuel just before we started that this is my first in-person seminar in over 2 years. So everything we had done has been, since COVID, has been virtual. So I'm very happy that to be back, and I'm very happy that the first one back is here, because I do love St. Mark's and I do love coming to St. Mark's and doing these presentations. So as Father Samuel said, this is our college admissions presentation. It should run us about an hour, maybe give or take 15 minutes or so. And so, just by show of hands, how many families here have juniors in high school? Okay, seniors in high school, sophomores in high school. Okay, sophomores. Okay, so good. This is good. This is going to be timely information for you. I'm going to start off by pointing out this QR code here, which is new for us. If you want to sign up for MIFA emails, and we'll send you 1 or 2 a month with content that's going to be important to you based on the age of your child or children. Like I said, 1 or 2 a month. We won't give out your email address to anybody. It'll just be us. But we'll remind you of things that are coming up, like PSAT time or SAT time, or we're having a presentation on this or that, or you want to start looking and getting your letters of recommendation ready because it's almost the end of junior year, etc. That's a great place to do that. So you can also follow us on social media. As you can see here, this is our social media information, all our different tags and places where you can find us. And I'll throw a special shout out to the podcast because I host it. And I'll mention we have a really good podcast episode with the director of admissions at Holy Cross, where he talks about 5 things that juniors can do to strengthen their application. So I was thinking about that when I was going through this presentation. I think you'll find it helpful when you're going through that process. No, we don't need this, do we? That's a Zoom, how to participate in Zoom. We don't need that note to self. So I'm going to tell you about MIFA. If you don't know, MIFA is the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, and we are a not-for-profit state authority, a quasi-state authority. We were created by the Massachusetts government back in 1982, and we have a mission to help families to plan, save, and pay for college. So we do that in a variety of ways. What we were created to do initially was to offer a loan, which is something that we do. We still do that. But we also offer savings programs, and we do sort of informational outreach and have guidance. So you can always call MIFA. You can always email MIFA. All of those services are free. And if you have any questions about going to college and how you get there and how you can pay for it, we're the folks that you can ask for free and get guidance on. If we don't know the answer to your question, we know who does know the answer to your question. So I hope you'll take advantage of that as you move through this process. So tonight what we'll talk about are the current trends in college admissions. So what have we been seeing over the past few years? How to compile your college list. So that's the first thing that you sophomores going into juniors or juniors are going to be doing, is compiling your list of colleges that you want to apply to. And we'll talk about how you can do that and what are the good things to look for and tools that'll help you to do that. Campus visits, this is something that changed pretty significantly over the past 2 years, and now we're sort of seeing back to normal. College campuses were sort of closed during the pandemic, but are now opening back up, so that's an important part of compiling your college list, and we'll talk about the benefits and the different types of campus visits. We'll talk about the application process, so once you know what colleges you want to apply to, what do you actually do to apply to those colleges, and how do colleges make decisions on who to admit. We will talk about financial aid because it follows so closely on admissions and also should really be part of your admissions thought process, really, is cost. So how much is this going to cost me? And compiling your list in such a way that you have a varying list of college costs. So, and then we'll close with some free resources like we always like to do. This is probably the beginning of a long process for you, right? It's compiling your college list, maybe visiting colleges, applying to colleges, filing financial aid forms, waiting to hear whether or not you've been admitted and making your decisions. All this stuff is going to be the next couple of years. It is natural to have questions, to be overwhelmed, but just know that there are a lot of free resources available to help you, one of which being MIFA, but there are others that we'll go through. And of course, if you have any questions throughout, just raise your hand and we can go over it. I may save it because we might answer that question in just a minute, and I'll be available afterwards as well if you have any questions that you don't want to ask publicly, but you do want to talk to me. I'll be around for that. So, as I said, any questions, don't be afraid to stop me. So we'll start off with trends in college admissions. So the biggest difference probably when I think of going to college and applying to colleges from when I was doing it and what it is now is this is a pretty much an electronic online process. You don't have to fill out applications and mail them off. It's a lot easier to apply to colleges now. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the actual applications. But what that means really is that students are applying to more schools. So I remember when I was going to college, I applied to 4 colleges. And so nowadays I don't talk to many kids who are only applying to 4 colleges, though that's still a fine number to apply to. Most apply to more than that, or closer to 10 sometimes. And we'll talk about that in more detail later on. But what this means is that colleges are getting a lot more applications, right? So they're having thousands of applications come through. And in order to, they want to admit students that they think are going to attend or have a good chance of attending their university. And so what that means is that a lot of colleges now are using demonstrated interest as something in their decisions. And what demonstrated interest is if you are a high school student and you're interested in going to Boston College, if you go to the Boston College website, if you talk to a Boston College representative at a college fair, if you call the admissions office, they're going to note that exchange. And that they say, okay, this student is interested. That's going to be demonstrated interest. Do you have a question? Exactly. Yes, and like how many times have they visited us? How interested is this student actually in attending this college? If we let them in, how likely are they to attend? So a lot of colleges now will keep track of how many times you contacted them, how you did it, was there follow-up. So just be aware of that if there are colleges that you are really interested in going to, that you do make yourself visible to them. So that is something that is definitely happening now. A lot of this, of course, can be done over social media, and social media is great for keeping in touch with colleges, for demonstrating interest, for finding out about colleges. But also, the other side to that, of course, is if you're a student, colleges may look at your social media profiles, right? So they may look at your Twitter account, or your Facebook, or Instagram, whatever it may be. And that could have a bearing on whether or not you're actually admitted to that college. So if they see something that's very unflattering or that would cause them embarrassment to have, this student admitted to this college did this, so, that's going to look probably poorly on your chances of getting admitted. So we always just like to say, to have a social media profile that is not going to embarrass you, that's going to reflect well on you, and on the colleges that you're applying to. So bear that in mind. Yes?
Would not having a social media profile be better?
Oh, that's a good question. Then you're talking to somebody who does not have a social media profile. So I don't have any Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. I have not heard that it is a negative in any way. But I just think the idea is that if you have one, you just don't want anything potentially that's going to embarrass you or the school, and something that reflects well on the student. I think the assumption is that most kids do have them now, so I think they're, colleges are pretty aware of what average social media accounts from kids are like, but you just want to be a little bit careful on that. But that's a good question. Yes. Yeah. I would say it's probably a good idea not to. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I mean, you do hear about it sometimes where somebody says something, maybe somebody noteworthy says something on social media, somebody sees it, and they might tag the college and say, is this the kind of student that you want? You know, people, it does find a way. You know, you've heard of perhaps students that got into a college and then had their acceptance withdrawn because of something that is on their social media that they've done. So you just don't, I mean, those are extreme cases, but you just want to be careful. That's all. So what we're seeing also is cost, as I mentioned before, is a bigger factor in people's minds when they're looking at college admission. So can I afford to go to the school if I get in? And there's a whole school of thought on that, and we can have that conversation. But it should be, because as we were just talking, it's gotten very expensive in certain colleges to go to college. So there are varying costs, and we don't want to forget that. And almost everybody will be eligible for some level of financial aid. So I wouldn't say you take a college off your list, but just consider it when you're compiling your college list. Something that we have seen is more test optional schools. So you might have heard of this. This really came to the forefront. We had this talking point on here even before the pandemic, but when the pandemic happened, this talk of the SAT being optional or the ACT being optional and not required for certain schools really took off. And a lot of colleges went test optional or don't require those standardized tests anymore, which can be good for some students. But maybe if your SAT scores are high, you may want to send them anyways. But that is certainly a trend that's occurring, and we'll talk about that in more detail when we get to the standardized section. And now, more applications at test optional schools resulting in more selectivity. So these colleges are now getting more applications from people without SATs or ACTs, and are being more selective as to who they admit. Yes? If you don't include your SAT? It depends. And as I said, we'll talk about that. But it really, if your SAT scores are going to bolster your application, submit them. If they're not at a test optional school, don't. But if you don't submit your SAT scores, your ACT scores, then that's going to put more weight on other elements in your application. So like your GPA. So that's the kind of trade-off that you get there. Yes. 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 So if your SAT scores are good, and if they are going to make you a more attractive student, then I would say submit them. Yeah. All right, I love the questions. Thank you. And now, unfortunately, with more applications and more students applying, there are longer wait lists, and there are more colleges doing wait lists and bigger wait lists. And we'll talk about wait lists, but it's, there are a few results of an application. You can be admitted, you can be denied, you can be waitlisted. And so we'll talk about that in more detail later on in the presentation. So those are generally the trends. Things are moving earlier. There are more colleges, more selectivity, and colleges are looking more closely at the students who they admit. Now, the best advice that I can give you, blanket advice, whether we're talking about admissions or we're talking about financial aid, is to stay organized. So use a system to keep track of applications. So you want to make sure that you have your colleges listed out, know when their application deadlines are, know if you are applying early, and we'll talk about this. Every college will have regular deadline, or most colleges will have one deadline for regular application, some for early action deadlines, from early decision. We'll talk about the differences between those later on. But just make sure you don't miss any deadlines. You really don't want to miss any deadlines. You can always add to applications. You can always change information on financial aid forms, but just want to stay on top of the deadlines and make sure that you're getting the colleges what they need when they need it. Now, we have a tool here that you can use to stay organized. This is something you can print off, you can put on the fridge, or I always say somebody in your family is bound to be the spreadsheet person. There's always a spreadsheet person in a family. So if somebody likes spreadsheets, have that person create a spreadsheet, give your college name, what they need, application, how many letters of recommendation, essays, etc. And when do they need these things by? So staying organized and keeping in contact with colleges is big for me. So you guys are at the beginning of this process, right? You haven't started doing your lists yet. You're probably in the research phase, or you're just starting to think about where you might want to go, you might want to study. There's a lot of information. There are a lot of tools that'll help you to do that. And so these examples here, there are certain sites, the first two being federal sites. The first one is College Navigator. And this is something that is, I think, I believe it's through the data comes from the National Center of Education Statistics. They have every college university in the country, all sorts of information. So, where is it? What type of college is it? Is there a religious affiliation? How many students, men and women, ratio? What majors do they offer, et cetera? You can sort of create a filter and say, I want to study at a public university in the Midwest, and they'll give you the options. Or you could say here and a 50-mile radius of here, or whatever, all my options. So much information on College Navigator. It looks kind of like a site with a lot of information. It can be a little overwhelming visually. There's just so much data to it, but it's a really, really good tool to use. This image that you see here is actually part of another federal site called the College Scorecard. And what this one is, it is designed to help parents, families, students filter their searches and sort of make a decision on whether or not this college is a good investment for them. So you can create a filter on this site just like you could for the College Navigator site. And for example, here we have UMass Boston. You can see now maybe in this example, this student searched four-year public colleges in the Boston area, and they came up, one of the searches, one of the returned items was UMass Boston. And so you can see here that it's in Boston, Massachusetts. It has 12,213 undergraduate students. It's a four-year college, public, in the city. And the big things for me on this is it gives you the graduation rate. So of the students that enroll freshman year, what percentage of those students actually complete and graduate? Because that's, of course, the end goal, right? So they graduate about 57% of the students that enroll there. The average annual cost, so what the average cost is to families per year, and this says $17,752. And you may fall on one side or the other of that. That's all going to depend on your own economic circumstances and things like that. But that's the average cost. And then, interestingly, the median earnings for graduates. So 10 years after enrolling in this college, or about 5 years after graduation, what is the average student earning? What's the average graduate earning? So how much is this likely to cost? How much are you likely to earn afterwards? Is this a good investment? So, it can get tricky because, of course, there's a lot of variables within this. Different students studying different majors are going to have different career outcomes and things like that. But that's one of the tools. Also, Big Future has a great college search feature. And Big Future is the site for the CSS profile. So that's the CSS is the company that handles the SAT. And they also do a financial aid application called the CSS Profile. And then finally, MIFA has a site called MIFA Pathway. And MIFA Pathway is a place where you can go. You can do college searches and save your searches. You could create a resume. You can actually apply through the Common Application through that site. You can keep track of your letters of recommendation and your essays and things like that. There's a lot you can do on MIFA Pathway. So these are sites to help you get started researching colleges. And the important factors to consider when you're looking at colleges. There's a lot of them, or there can be a lot of them. I remember speaking, as I told you, I host the podcast, and I had an idea to do a show with 4 students and their admissions applications and process and how they decided to make their decision as to where they were going to go. And it's funny, one of the first things they all said when they were thinking about colleges was they said, well, I wanted a big school, or I wanted a small school, or I wanted a school here. So institution size, so your college size and your college location, was really the very first thing that all of those students said. So, how many students, do you want a big UMass Amherst type college, you want a smaller college. That's the first thing that a lot of students decide. And I think a lot of the time, students that have come from big high schools maybe want smaller schools, or maybe the opposite. If they come from a small school, they want to try a big school. But whatever that is certainly something to consider. And location is a big one. Do you want to be in the city? Do you want to be in the country? Do you want to be somewhere warm? Do you want to be close to home? These things are important. I remember when I was, again, considering colleges, one of the first things, I wanted to be in a city. Because I know I went to visit my brother who went to Syracuse University. And to me, it just seemed like the college. And there was nothing else other than the college. And I didn't want that. I wanted to be in Boston. I wanted to be in New York. I wanted to be somewhere. So that was the one thing I definitely knew I wanted. The second thing is academic fit. So, you know, am I going to be able to succeed at this school, right? Is this a fit for me academically? If I'm a B student, am I going to be able to go to some place that is going to allow me to succeed? And that's also the most important thing, and we'll get into this, that colleges look for in their students is, you know, is this person going to be able to academically succeed in college? Campus culture, oh yes. I would say it's the GPA. That is probably the most, and it gets a little bit more complicated than that. But the biggest thing that colleges will look for, again, is can this student academically succeed at this school? And the biggest factor in that is the GPA. So the high school grades. And again, it's more complicated than that. They're not supposed to see good grades per se, and we'll get into that, but that is the biggest thing. Campus culture is really important, and that is, you know, basically what things are like on this campus. Yes? No, not at all. Yes. That's a good question. Yeah, so the amazing thing is that admissions officers, and if you didn't hear the question, it's that GPAs are different from school to school. So a 3.8 GPA at one school might not necessarily be the same as a 3.8 GPA at another college, high school. And so the admissions officers have relationships within these high schools, and they know the high schools, and they know the areas, and they know, you know, the sort of ratings of the schools. So they're familiar with that, and that does factor into their decisions. So they're aware of the difference between a 3.8 GPA, you know, in Natick versus another city, and will look at that student accordingly. Yeah. Yes. 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 I actually don't get into it too much, so thank you for mentioning it. But yes, that's exactly right. They are aware of the high schools and the academic levels and the profiles, and they can try to compare those students between, you know, those levels. So yes, thank you. But that's a very good question. Yes. Yes, we will. So they will look at the entire profile, the entire 4-year career, or up to this point, 3-year career of the student. And one of the things that they want to see, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but is if there is improvement from the freshman year through the junior. So if you don't start off so great, but you improve, that is going to go a long way in their decisions. But they will look at the entire career. Yes. Mm-hmm. They would see both of those transcripts, and they would be able to account for the difference between those types of schools. questions. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks. So anything else? No? Okay. So again, thinking about which colleges to apply to, we've got academic fit, campus culture, what's important on the campus, right? So is this a big sports school? Is it big into arts, science, politics? We used to say go and look at the bulletin board of the college, but I don't think anybody does. I don't think that exists anymore. But you can talk to students, you can talk to alumni of the college and see what type of place it is. I went to Emerson College, which has its very distinct culture to it. It was an art school and a media school and a performance school. So that had a very definite feel to it. And so that is another example in which college visits or campus visits can be important, because you get a sense of those things very quickly when you're actually there. Yes? Well, that's a good. I'm going to save that because we're going to get into different types of campus visits. That's a very good question, though, and so we'll talk about it. Depends on the type of visit you're doing, whether it's like an informal drop by or whether it's an actual scheduled visit. But we will get into that later. Yes, thank you. So campus culture activities. Do you have something you like to do? Do you like rowing? That was in the news, right? Rowing, and do they have a rowing team? Certain things like that. Study abroad programs. I know I mentioned Emerson College. They had a program that was, you did a semester in Europe, and people loved that. I didn't do it, but people loved it, and that was important to a lot of folks. And of course, you want to line up with your intended major, right? So especially if you want to do something that's very specific, like engineering or journalism or whatever. If you are sort of lucky enough to have something that you want to study, you want to do, you obviously want to go to a good school for that, or a school with a good program, maybe one with strong internships or sort of a pipeline to that industry. You want to take a look at that. I just mentioned career and internship services. Affordability, of course, is something important, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, and the social climate. And social climate is similar to culture in a way, and this is something that you can test when you're looking, when you're visiting campuses. So here we're going to talk about campus visits. So there are two types of campus visits, the formal and the informal. So informal campus visits are just what I said, like you just want to stop by, walk around campus. College campuses are open. So they're open to the public. You can go. You don't have to be a student to walk around a campus, especially if it's outdoor. So you can go on and get a feel for, again, the size, the setting. Is it sort of a leafy campus that you can sort of walk around and it feels very collegiate or is it an urban campus and you're in the city for the most part? And then you can also get a feel for the culture. Now, to your question, what's the most important thing when you visit a college campus? We talk sometimes about just walking around, going to the cafeteria, seeing what that's like. Most colleges have a student union or a student building that you can go on and take a look at. I grew up 2 blocks away from Eastern Nazarene College in Quincy, so we always used to go and walk around that college and play video games in the rec hall and stuff like that. So that had a very, you got a sense of that campus right away. You can also talk to students there. You might be able to, if you go to a formal visit, and that is a visit that is arranged ahead of time through the admissions office. And this is something that you can arrange, again, through the website of the admissions office. You may be able to get in touch with them over their social media accounts and arrange this. And this is good, too, because it does demonstrate interest. So if you're interested in a college and you reach out, they'll know that when it comes time, when they have your application and they say, this person wants to come here, did they take a tour? Yes, they did. Did they stay overnight, which is something that some college campuses will allow you to do? Did they sit on classes, which is something that you're able to do as well? Get a feel for the class size and the class environment. See what types of things, again, are important there. Is football on a Saturday afternoon, like is it a Michigan State type of situation where there's football every Saturday afternoon? It's a huge event that the entire school is wrapped up in. Is that something that you want to do? So those are the two different types of campus visits, informal visits and formal visits. And I will say, during the pandemic, when colleges were closed down, they did a lot of virtual outreach. So they had like sort of virtual visits where you could go and book a time with admissions officers. You could do a virtual tour through video. You could reach out to alumni and speak to alumni in your area. And this is something that may still be available at a lot of colleges, even though the pandemic is over and you can go. A lot of times people aren't actually able to visit the campus that they're interested in, especially if you can imagine if you want to go to California. It's not the easiest thing in the world to hop on a plane and go visit. So if you can't make that happen, you may be able to do some things virtually, or you can go to a institution that's close by that is a similar size, a similar type, get a read on how you feel walking around that campus. Because it is something that we see, too. I mean, you talk to students, like I mentioned in that show I did, students often will have very strong ideas about where they want to go based on the material, based on the where their friends are going, based on the pamphlets that they see or the website, and then they actually step on campus and they know right away that they don't want to go here. Or the opposite. They know right away it just feels good here, or something they say. Like, I could see myself walking around here. I could see myself doing it. It feels good. So it's very important, if you can make it there, to actually visit the campuses. And if you can't, like I said, there are other things that you can do. Oh, sure. Yep. You should. I mean, colleges do have programs where students in high school can come in, stay at a dorm overnight for 1 or 2 nights, maybe for the weekend, and get a feel for it. So yes, and also on formal visits, they should tour dorm buildings and let you know of what the rooms look like and what the amenities are and things like that. So yeah, definitely that is something that she should be able to know before applying. Sometimes, not always. So if you, even if you, and the question if you didn't hear it is, do you have to live on the at college on the dorm? You don't have to. You can commute from home. Some colleges do have requirements though for, like, if you're going to be for the first year that you need to live on campus. So that can happen from college to college. But I would say most colleges, you don't have those requirements. But that is a conversation that you can have with the admissions office and let them know of your concerns, and they can certainly help you. Yeah. All right. Oh, college fairs. So this is another thing that you can utilize in your search and your compiling your list. You may have seen them already in your high schools or advertised somewhere else. They're basically places where colleges can come. They'll send some admissions representatives. They'll have their promotional materials, their brochures, and their contact information and things like that. And students can go and talk to representatives from those colleges and ask them questions like the question you just had. Do you have to live on campus your freshman year? Can I see the dorms first? Am I going to be able to do that? And again, this is another good way to demonstrate interest, because those admissions officers, especially if you give them your information to be put in an email list, they'll know, and they'll note that conversation that they had with you. These happen sometimes in high schools, in the auditorium or the gym. They may set up. I've been to many of them over the years. There's a really big one that happens every year in the Seaport Convention Hall in Boston, and it is the NACAC Fair, which is the National Association of College Admissions Counselors. And it's huge. So there's like hundreds of colleges there. Yes. NACAC, it's right up there, actually. So you check nacacfairs.org for upcoming events. And so they have a huge fair once a year, and I think they have other smaller fairs as well throughout the year. And so this particular one that I'm thinking of, the really big one, this second bullet point jumps out at me, or third bullet point rather. have a plan of attack before you start, because it can be overwhelming. You know, there's a lot of colleges. If you have colleges that you're really interested in and you want to talk to, make sure you know where they are so you can go to them first, so you don't get too tired or too overwhelmed, or you're not really listening after a while, and you don't have a good session with them. So you can check out the college list beforehand. So all the participants will be listed ahead of time, and sometimes, you know, there will be a map of where they are, so you can go right to them. Oftentimes there are also sessions not unlike this one, where it might be about admissions, might be about financial aid, that people like me, that's what I was doing there. I was giving financial aid presentations at the NACAC fair. So you want to take advantage of those if you can, see what's being offered and see if you're interested in those. And you can schedule one-on-one meetings with colleges either there or make plans to do so later. Again, this is a good way to be in contact with the admissions office, so you can start a relationship with the college that you want to go to, and sort of have an email correspondence and learn a lot more and demonstrate your interest that way. So college fair tips. You know, your sophomores, I'm not sure if they would lead you down into those yet if they're in your high school. By junior year, they probably will be, or they'll let you know. There are representatives from area colleges here. You may want to go and talk to them. So keep your eyes and ears out for that, because, as I said, I think those are fairly common in pretty much any high school. Okay. Now, if you have colleges that you're interested in, you want to develop a list and separate them into 3 categories. And this is kind of like a famous list. They used to call them target schools and safety schools and things like that. But you want to have 3 categories of colleges, and they're all how likely it is that you'll be admitted to these colleges. So the first one is likely. So you are likely to be admitted to these colleges. And you want to have a list that has all 3 of these types of schools. So how do you know if you're likely to be admitted to a college? Each college will have on their website a profile of their admitted students, or what their requirements are to be admitted to that college. So they'll have GPA requirements, so it might be a 3.0 GPA that you have to match. There may be standardized test scores that you have to meet, although, again, less common these days. And they'll have a sort of a range of students of their classes. Yeah, we have anywhere from a 3.2 to a 4.0 GPA student here. There'll be a student profile. And so you can get a feel by looking at your own GPA and your own scores and things like that, where you fall. So are you likely to be admitted to this college based on your GPA and based on the students that they admit? If so, then this is going to land on your likely to be admitted schools. And then there are the reach schools, which, you know, maybe you have a 3.9 GPA and they're looking for a 4.0 or 3.9 on or what have you. You may get in, you may not. You're not sure. It's a reach. You want to have some of those schools as well. And then there are the possibles, so the ones that you're 50-50 on. And so I remember once hearing that, and I liked this advice, that while you should have all 3 of these on your list, you actually want to put the most amount of work in your likely pool. Because if you don't get into your reach schools, or even your possible schools, and you do get into your likely schools, well, that's where you're going to be probably attending. So you want to make sure that your likely schools, the places that you're likely to be admitted to, that they are places that you would want to go, that you would be happy attending. And so that is something. Now, a very popular question is, how many colleges should you apply to? And it's a difficult question to answer. Everything is personal, so there's really no standard. You should only apply to this. Like I said, I applied to 4 colleges. That seems like a really small amount these days. Although, when I think about it, most students tend to apply to, I would say, anywhere between 6 and 9 colleges, or 6 and 8 colleges. But that's not a rule of thumb that you have to obey. It's just that seems a pretty good number to have a few of each of these options here. So this is how likely you are to be admitted to these schools. Another factor is cost, which we'll talk about. But your list should also reflect varying costs. So, you know, if you get in and you're not able to pay for college, if you don't get the financial aid package that we were hoping to receive, what other options for other colleges do you have? So you should take great care when you're compiling your list to include all those things. Yes? Mm-hmm. So you could transfer colleges. So you'd have to apply to another college as a transfer student and be admitted, and then just basically withdraw from that first school and enter the second one. It depends. I mean, I don't know about withdrawal fees per se. There are probably costs associated with what you've already paid to attend that college. So I think it depends on how quickly you withdraw. Let's say, you have loans or something and you have paid some fees and you've taken classes for a few months and then you decide to withdraw. You might get you might get some of that back, but you might not get all of it back. Whereas if you apply, yes, yeah, yeah. Mm. Right. 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 Yes. Yeah. No, that's right. But and yes, that's a good. And transferring does happen, but there may be costs associated with that if it's if it's a situation where you get there right away and you want to withdraw, then maybe you can reverse everything out. But the longer you stay, the more chance it is that you are going to incur some costs. Yes. Yes, you have to put a deposit down on a particular college, and that is committing to going. And then we'll talk about that in a minute when we talk about early decision. Oh, we're right here, actually. So, and I'll bring this up. But so in terms of a timeline, as to like when you apply and when you hear back and things like that, different colleges have different practices. And within the same college, there may be different options. So we think about regular decision. Most students are going to go regular decision. What that means is, let's say you're applying in the fall. You're not going to hear until January or February whether or not, well, probably February or March, whether or not you've been admitted. That is, you do your application. Regular decision deadlines are probably around January or so. So you have until then to apply to these colleges if you're applying regular decision. And then you're going to hear in the early spring, basically. There are ways to apply early, and they're different, and they're important differences. So the first one is early action. And what this means is you're applying early, and you want to know early whether or not you've been admitted. So that has an earlier deadline. So early action, the early deadlines, the first ones actually may have passed. The first ones are probably that I'm aware of are October 15th or November 1st. So it could be that some schools have passed, but some have not. So early action simply means that you're applying early, so you want to get that application in by their early deadline, and they'll let you know probably before Christmas whether or not you've been admitted. The other part of that is financial aid. So financial aid applications also probably at most schools have that earlier deadline. So you want to submit your admissions applications and your financial aid applications by the early action deadline if you're applying early action. So this kind of goes back to the stay organized principle, which is you just want to make sure you know what the college wants and when they want to buy and don't miss a deadline. That's if you're applying early. Now, early is not binding. It means you're not making any commitments to a particular college if you're applying early action. If you're applying early decision, that is binding. So what that means is that if you're applying early decision somewhere, you're applying early, you're saying, not only I want to know early if I'm admitted, but if I am admitted, I am coming to this school. So you're committing to attending that school. And what that means is they expect you to withdraw all your other applications to other colleges, and you're agreeing to attend that college. So you want to be careful about this because you can only apply early decision to one school because you're committing to attending if they let you in. And you're doing that before you see the financial aid offer, right? So you want to be very careful about that. Only apply early decision places that you know you can afford and that you know that you want to attend before you see financial aid offer. Because it does happen that sometimes it's an issue. Yes?
Would it reduce your chance of getting some financial aid because you know you're going there anyway? Or
not? No, it should. That's a good question. The fact that you I do get that question, and I get the sort of the other end of that conversation, which is if you apply for financial aid, does it mean you might not get in? And so, no. The answer to that is no. Now, the schools can do what they want, right? So I can't speak for every college, but my understanding is that generally, no, it doesn't. You're eligible for the aid that you receive, and that's going to be based on the financial aid forms that you file, right, and the college practices. So the early decision shouldn't have any impact on that. What early decision does impact, and why people do it, is because it does give them a leg up on being admitted. It does improve your chances of being admitted to this college. Because remember, colleges want to admit people that want to come to the college. So if they've got somebody who's already agreed to come to the college and they can lock that person in, then that's a more attractive candidate to them. So, yes, do you have a question? No, after you're accepted. Yeah, after you're accepted. And so if it's a situation where you are admitted early decision, and this happens every year to somebody, and I did get this question already, that somebody did get admitted early decision, but then found that they could not pay for it. So what happens, and what do I do? If that happens, you should contact the admissions office and see if they will remove you from the early decision agreement. It's up to the college whether or not they will do that or not. And they'll probably have you prove that you can't pay for it, and why you applied early decision, etc. If you broke an early decision agreement, though, colleges may let your other colleges know that you've broken an early decision agreement, and that may negatively impact your chances of getting in at that college. Yeah. Early decision, yeah. Well, that's a good question. I don't know if I have figures on that. See, early action. If you're admitted early action, great. If you're not admitted early action, they may just put you to the regular decision pool, and then they'll decide whether or not you got in, or they might just not. They might waitlist you or deny you. But I don't know the answer to that. I would imagine so, but I feel like I can't tell you yes on that. That's just I want to know early whether or not I've been admitted. So as a college doesn't have that guarantee, in a sense, from you that you're going, that takes away some of that bonus for them. Yeah, I can find out. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I just want to encourage, as a church, so Jonathan's giving you everything. As a church, we don't recommend early decision because of the financial part, and not every family can commit. Early action is highly recommended, but then my recommendation as a Abuna is
Yes, early, yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's a good perspective. I think that's valid. The other types. Oh yes, yeah. So no, that's fine. And everyone is okay with regular decision and early action and all that stuff. It's that if you're applying early decision and you're saying yes, I'm coming to this college, you're probably the college is saying, oh, we have a student who's ready to come, and we want to admit them. Yes, so it is more likely that you'll be admitted if you apply that way, and possibly early action. Father Samuel has a good perspective on early action as well. But any way you want to do it is fine, and you should just be very careful about early decision. That's what I would say. Yeah. The other types are rolling admission, and that is just colleges that are making their decisions as they're getting their application. So maybe like from November through May, they're admitting students. So it's not like a clear deadline. You have to apply from here. Now we're going to make up our class, and we go. They're making the decisions and admissions as they're getting the applications in. So that is not as common as the other types of admission. But the only thing I'd say about that is probably if you're applying rolling admission, it's probably a good idea to apply early because there may be a benefit to doing that before most of the class has already been settled. And then open admissions they admit most students just about any time. So, I'm thinking about the community colleges in particular. So as long as you graduated high school and you have your diploma, you can be admitted to the school and take classes. You may not be admitted to every program within the school or every major, but you can attend classes. Now, it's actually how you go about doing the college application. Again, colleges are going to vary in what applications that they want. But there are sort of common applications, the most common of which is called the Common Application or the Common App. And so, I think it's in the hundreds of colleges that take the Common App. And this is something that you can fill out your Common Application and submit it to every college that wants a Common Application at once. And this is something that we actually link to on MIFA Pathway, so you can do your Common Application through MIFA Pathway. And this is, part of why colleges are getting thousands of applications more than they used to. But the Common App is the most popular application for admissions that colleges use. Other aggregate applications are things like the Universal College App, the Coalition App. Colleges may have their own specific college application, their own like institutional school application. It's not all that common anymore, but there may be, and this is a good, again, reminder to look at the website of each college and see what they want and how to apply. And then paper application, I don't know why. I mean, I can't imagine any college that has a paper application anymore. I don't know why that bullet point is there, but it must be a good reason. But I have not come across any paper applications recently. So your application is important, but also it has to have these supporting documents along with it, right? So the most important thing we already talked about is the GPA, so your high school transcript, and that's going to be sent through your high school counselor and through the Common App. Your standardized test scores, again, this is something that's less common now, but still fairly common. Your SAT scores or ACT scores, and you can send those to the college. If you've taken multiple SATs, you can send your best SAT scores to the college. Some colleges will allow you to, use, let's say, the verbal score from your second SAT and the math score from your third. Some won't, but it depends. So again, if you're going to a college that requires them, you want to send them. If you're going to one that is test optional, send them if they're going to make your application better. Letters of recommendation from teachers. So the colleges will have different numbers of letters of recommendation that they want. Some colleges want 2, some want 3. The pieces of advice I have on this: more does not equal better for letters of recommendation. If a college requests 2 letters of recommendation, don't send them 4. They're not going to read the other one. It's not going to help your application. I would say that you want to start nailing these down at the end of your junior year. So find out which teachers you want to write your letter of recommendation, and ask them before the end of the year, junior year. They can work on it over the summer and then give it to you your senior year. It should be someone who knows you really well. Maybe a junior year teacher is a good person to ask because they've seen you the most recently. They know what you're like. They're familiar with you. If you're going to a particular program, like I said, engineering, let's say you want to be an engineering student. Maybe you want to pick your physics teacher, your chemistry teacher. That's going to speak well of you in that course of study. That's a good idea. We always say, write a thank you note to your person who wrote you a letter of recommendation. Again, this is covered in that podcast that I did, the 5 things that juniors can do to strengthen their application. Activity lists or resumes. So this is something that colleges want to see. So not just your grades, not just your test scores, but also who are you outside of school? What do you do after 2:30 or 3 o'clock when you're not in school? And so a lot of people say, well, no, I don't do sports. That's fine. You don't have to do sports. You don't do clubs at school. You don't have to do that either. But what do you do? Do you have a job? Do you do any kind of community work? I know there's things within the church here that are done. So you definitely put those. If you even help babysit somebody in the family or take care of an elderly relative or whatever it might be, write that. Gives the colleges a sense of you. Yes. No, I knew you would want to talk. Yes. No, not at all. No, that's a good question. Yeah, no, they would not look askance at any religious sort of I don't know any college that would. Yeah. No. Sure. Yeah. You can write whatever. There's no maximum what you can. If you do 10 things, write 10 things. I also say too that if you are part of clubs or if you are part of a sort of group effort, colleges like to see, what you did in that. Not just you were part of it, but what did you actually do? So, and they, if you held any sort of leadership position or any sort of, I guess leadership position, that's something that they want to see as well. And, not being the leader type myself, I kind of bristle at that, but that is something that they look at. Oh, that depends on the college and what programs the college has. No, I mean, just on the decision, this we're talking about, like, they want a sense of who you are as a student and what's important to you. And so, certainly after they're admitted, they could do any of those things, but once they're admitted, they're admitted. So, yeah. Yes. Mm. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yes, I understand. Yeah. At certain colleges, there will be, additional items that you could or may have to do. So interviews, I think college interviews used to be a lot more common than they are now, but sometimes they offer interviews. Sometimes you'd have to do an interview, although that's very rare. Sometimes they give you an opportunity to do an interview. And again, if this is going to help you, if you're somebody who does well in interviews, and you're going to come across well, then you may want to do it. If you're a musician or an artist or a performer of any kind, you may have to audition. Like I remember my sister went to a musical theater program at New York University. She had to audition to get in. Yes? Is the list of activities on the Common App? I don't think so, but I don't know. I'm not sure. This is something that is done. I'm almost out of batteries here on this. I'm less than 5% here. I'm not sure if it is, to be honest with you. I have not actually gone through the Common App in about 2 years, and I can't remember if that list is on there. I can find out for you and let you know. And yeah, that's all I can do that. Probably not, but there are scholarships. There are outside scholarships that you can apply for that they may matter for. So there may scholarships that are open to students who are musicians or what have you. So that could be something. But the college itself, it would depend upon. Well, it could be. It could be at the college level. So at the college level, you could get a merit scholarship, thank you, for something like your art or your music or your sports, or you can get an athletic scholarship or an artistic scholarship. That is possible. Yeah, that is possible. Thank you. Yes. There was an item on the last slide about the essay. Oh yes, personal essay. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah. I had. There's a lot on the personal essay coming up, but I know that is a big concern for students. What do I write in the essay? What do I write in the essay? What are they looking for? Again, I'll do my thing. I can't believe I'm plugging this episode so much. But that show about the juniors, what they can do to strengthen their application, has really great thoughts on the essay. And this is somebody who comes from Holy Cross and has read many, many essays. And he has great things to say about it. I will talk about the essay in a little bit more detail later on, but it's just a few slides. But yes, personal essay is part of almost any college application. So the student will have to write. And there are prompts within the Common App of things that you might want to write about. You don't have to write about those things, but they're just things to get you thinking. You can write about whatever you like. But there are just things to get you thinking. So when we mentioned... When you had the question earlier about what is the most important thing in a college application, it is academic readiness. So it's the GPA, but I said it's more complicated than this is your GPA. And this is what I want. Aside from the GPA, they want to see that you've demonstrated what's called academic rigor. And what that means is not just your grades, but did you challenge yourself as a student? So, if you got all A's all the way through high school, but you never took any honors courses or you never took any AP courses, the A's are good. They're going to look at that and it's going to look good, but admissions officers probably wonder why you never took honors courses or took AP courses. And I say that's not really demonstrating rigor. On the other hand, it gets a little tricky. It's a bit of a tightrope, right? Because you don't want to do too much and take AP courses and have your A's fall to C's because you're in an AP course and you have a huge workload that you're suffering under. Right. So you have to kind of feel it out. And I wish I had a better answer than that, but really they want to see that you're challenging yourself, so you want to demonstrate that, but you don't want to do it to the extent that your academic performance starts to suffer. So it's something that every student really has to kind of navigate by themselves, and they can sort of consult their counselor at high school as to how to effectively do that. So that's a kind of a point of good grades versus challenging classes. Improvement over time, and this is something that I mentioned earlier when you said, is it just the grades, or is it the junior year grades, or is it the whole thing? It's the whole thing they'll look at. So they'll look at your GPA every year of your high school career. After you apply to colleges, you can still give them your grades after you apply before they've made their decision. So if you're getting all A's and you've applied and you haven't heard back, and then you got your report card again or your grades again, and you still got all A's, send those off to the colleges too, because it's going to make you a more attractive student, right? It's going to bolster your case to do that. They want to know that you're exceeding the minimum requirements. Yes? Yes, so they will know whether a GPA is by the school is weighted or unweighted, and they'll have ways to look at that and compare that as well. Yeah, that's a good question. There are requirements that you have to meet to graduate. So certain colleges or high schools will have, you need to take 4 years of math and 4 years of English, but two years of a language or 3 years of science. Especially if you're going to a particular program, they want to see that you're meeting or exceeding those minimum requirements. And also the courses you're taking, are they relevant to your field of study? So as I said, if you're lucky enough to know that you want to study journalism and you're applying to a journalism school, do you have your English courses, right? How well do you do in your English courses? If you want to be an engineer, how good are you in your science courses? Things like that. Now, it says here there's a sliding scale for Massachusetts public colleges and universities. So what that means is that, different public colleges or universities have requirements in order to be admitted, just like any other schools. So maybe a 3.0 to get into UMass versus a 2.5 to get into a different school. However, if you're below that, maybe you can get in if your test scores are over a certain amount. So there's a sliding scale that they operate under. So those are something that you can check out the college websites for the requirements there. And standardized tests we've talked about a fair amount already, but the PSATs, as some of you have taken you taken PSATs yet? The sophomores, no? Okay. But sophomore year, that's generally when you take your PSATs. Your SATs are in your junior year. And you know how these essentially work. The SATs are more common in this part of the country than the ACTs, but although that's sort of, getting equal. Both sets of tests measure college readiness. There's free prep for both online, and the way they're scored are a bit differently, though. The SATs on a scale from, I think it's 400 to 1600. And so that's split between your math scores and your verbal scores. ACTs are on a scale, I believe they top out at around 36 or so. And there's different requirements for different tests in different sections. ACT measures general knowledge in a way that the SAT does not. Again, a lot of colleges now are test optional, but still many are not test optional. And if your SAT scores will help you, you do want to send them. SATs you can take multiple times, ACTs as well. So if you do your SAT and you think, I think I can do better next time and want to do prep, you can take it again and send your better scores. And studies do kind of show that up to a certain point you do improve at the SAT. I think it shows that after the third SAT that you take, you're kind of the results kind of stay the same after that. But you do tend to improve, especially with online test prep or any test prep. You do improve on that. There are also AP exams. So if you're taking any advanced placement courses, those culminate in an exam that you take. And so your AP exam can be sent to your colleges, and that's going to, again, look good. Those are impressive things to take AP courses and to score well in an AP exam. Also, they may be used for college credits, depending on the college. So the AP test is scored on between, I think, 1 and 5. If you score a 5 on your AP test, you may have some college credits, maybe 5 college credits taken care of. But in any event, even if you don't at that college, that's going to look very impressive. Yes? Yeah. I don't think that there are any maximum amount of attempts that can work against you. It's just that after a while, it's just the returns start to diminish. It does, yeah. So even if even as you said, your AP is in history and not engineering, and you want to be an engineering student, it's still going to look good on a application, and you still may count for college credits. So yeah, it may look better if it is in engineering, but it still looks good under the history. But yes, yeah. Go ahead. Yes, yeah, the exam is the important part, in a sense, of the AP, yeah. That's good. Thank you for stressing that. We did talk about the activity list in the resume a little bit, but I'll just highlight again, to include family responsibilities and employment in this. Again, this is about who you are outside of school. And to highlight the impact on your community, that goes a long way. So you had the question about, religious studies or religious work and whether or not that's going to look bad at any colleges. No, because it's going to show community impact for the most part, right? And so I just want to say, again, membership in clubs, in initiatives, in work is great. But again, they really want to know what you did in those clubs. What was your responsibility? What did you do? Okay, essays. Here we're going to talk about the essays. So again, I'll go back to my conversation with the director at Holy Cross, who said the essay is his favorite part. It's everybody's favorite part of the college application. He said when they're looking at, this is like a direct quote, or almost a direct quote from what he said. When we're looking at a student's application file, he's not sitting in a leather chair next to a fireplace with a dog reading the transcript. He's got 2 computers open. He's doing all this stuff. They can see GPAs, they can read letters of recommendation, they see scores. All of that stuff, it's kind of boring after a while. What they like, he characterized it, is this is like the ice cream at the end of the meal. They get to read the student's essay. They actually get to hear from the student directly. And what they want to know, or what he wants to know as the director at the school, is can the student write, and can they write about themselves? So that's what they want to know, and in his case, what he wants to know. So it says share something meaningful and personal. It doesn't have to be weighty. It doesn't have to be a tragedy. It doesn't have to be when your house burned down or anything like that. As long as it's something that's meaningful to you and personal. They want to know about who you are. So you want this to be from your own words. Start writing early is a really good idea, and I know that the students that I spoke to that had a lot of success, not only in being admitted, but in finding scholarships, wrote a lot. There's a lot of essay writing, because you have to write essays to be admitted to college, and if you're applying for scholarships from outside organizations or outside companies, a lot of those require essays. Now, you can reuse some essays, that's fine, but there's a lot of writing. Read it out to parents, read it out to folks, have people proofread it, but it should remain your words. And it says here, plagiarism is taken very seriously, obviously. And again, my friend at Holy Cross said, I read 17-year-old essays. I read thousands of them every year. I know when it's not a 17-year-old who's writing this essay. So, it should still be, not that I think anyone is actually going to plagiarize somebody's essay and just taking it, but make sure it's still in the student's own words. You can sort of police the grammar and the spelling and stuff like that, but it should be the student's voice and their thoughts. These are the Common App essay prompts, so you can get a feel for what the Common App suggests. And suggest is the wrong word. They're not suggesting that you do these necessarily, but just the type of things to get you thinking. So just a few. Discuss an accomplishment, event, or realization that sparked a period of personal growth and a new understanding of yourself or others. Reflect on a time when you questioned or challenged a belief or idea. What prompted your thinking? What was the outcome? The lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? So these are kind of deep questions, as you can imagine, as you can see, and they require some reflection. And so it's good to think that this is the kind of reflection that they want to see. And different colleges will have different views on these things, but none of these things are things that you actually have to write about, but just to get you thinking once again. And it can be about anything that you want. And I'll leave this one piece of advice too, again from my friend who says this is the ice cream after dinner, is if you have a good time, if you have fun writing your essay, they will have fun reading your essay. And so, now not to say it doesn't have to be funny or light or what have you, but it should be something that you want to write. Because if you're writing something that you don't want to write, and it's really hard to write it, and you're working, it's probably going to read that way too. And you want an assistant, you want an admissions officer to remember your application, and for that to make an impression on them. They're reading thousands of these. So, again, personal expression is good. Letters of recommendation. I think we covered this already, actually, so we don't have to go through letters of recommendation again, but just in case you want it. By the end of the junior year, you should contact the professors or teachers that you want to write your letters of recommendation so they can work on it over the summer, and don't ask more or too many more than the college. Don't send more than the college requires. Again, interviews, they can be a good idea for students. Some students may not want to do it. Only offered at a small number of schools. Like I said, it used to be a lot more common than it is now. There are two types of interviews. There are informational interviews and evaluative. So informational interviews are really for the student. They want to interview somebody at the college to get their questions answered about the college and what it's like at the college. And those are useful for the student and good to demonstrate interest. Evaluative essays are when they're looking at a student and sort of getting a sense of who they are to know whether or not they want to admit that student. It's okay to be nervous at these type of interviews. They expect you sort of to be nervous. But just know if you are doing one of these interviews, have some idea of what you want to say about why you want to go to that college and what you expect to get out of that college. So know your reasons for applying to the college. Cover the basics. Ask thoughtful questions if you are asking questions. And as I said, they expect you to be a bit nervous, so it's not the end of the world if you are. Once all of this material is in and they make their decision, as I mentioned, there are a few different outcomes. You can be admitted. You can be deferred, which is you're not accepted. If you applied early action or early decision, they could defer your application to the regular decision pool. You can be denied, or you can be waitlisted. So the thing about the waitlist is colleges can wait list any number of students. And some colleges have a you might wait list up to 40% or so of their class. And sometimes you might not ever get off the wait list. So if it can almost be a way to sort of just not denying but not admitting students. You know, unfortunately, it does happen. So if you find yourself on a wait list, there's things that you can do. First of all, you might be expected to actually accept a spot on the wait list. So it might be something that the student has to do to say, yes, I want to be on the wait list. If you're waitlisted at your top choice and you still want to be considered, again, if your grades are going to continue to bolster your application, keep submitting them to the college. What you should do is make plans to attend another college or university, though, because many times students will not be admitted off the wait list. And you have to make a decision by May 1st as to where you're going to go next year, if you're a senior in high school. So by May 1st, you have to put a deposit down at a college to save your spot. If you haven't heard from your top choice by May 1st, you should make another decision. And that's difficult. That's difficult. But it does happen. Now, if you're admitted off the wait list after that point, you could still attend that other school. You probably won't get your deposit back that you gave to that second school, because deposits are non-refundable for the most part. But that is, unfortunately, something that happens. Okay, now we'll talk about affordability really quick. One thing that I think you should do is to visit each college, and each college website is required to have what's called a net price calculator. It should only take you a few minutes to do. And what it is you know, you put in some basic information, your income, your assets. Depending on the schools, they're going to have different net price calculators. So some might want the students' grades or SAT scores. Some might not. And what it will do, it will give you an idea of how much financial aid you're likely to get at that school and what your balance is going to be. And so it's all only estimates, so it's not written in stone, but I think they're a good tool to use. I mean, we used it when my wife went to school a few years ago for Lesley University, and it ended up being very, very accurate. That's what we were going to pay. So I think it's a good idea to visit a college that the student's interested in, the website, do a net price calculator, see what it might cost you after financial aid. And also research different types of aid. So there are two types: need-based aid, which is dependent on your income, and merit-based aid. So you're thinking about things like academic scholarships, athletic scholarships. Some colleges do that, some colleges don't. So that really varies from school to school. And you can start looking for private scholarships now. And we recommend a two sort of track strategy for this. One is local scholarships. And for local scholarships, you should consult your high school counselor. They have the most information on local business scholarships and local organization scholarships. For national scholarships, you can use a search engine online. Never pay to have a search engine done. There are plenty of free, good scholarship search engines. But the student will create a profile and then have the opportunities for scholarships sort of filtered to them, and they can apply for all the scholarships they need. They can start doing that now. Doesn't have to wait until, you know, they're almost at college. We talked about net price calculators, so I'm going to skip that. So applying for financial aid, I don't think you guys are at this point yet, any of you, but we'll talk about it briefly. The FAFSA is an application that is going to be sent to every college. It's a free application for federal student aid. Some colleges, in addition to that, want another form called the CSS Profile. These are for mainly private colleges, but not every private college. And this is for colleges that give out a lot of their own aid, and they want more information than what the federal government collects. So they're probably going to want more information from you. That's for mostly need-based financial aid. But also there may be college-specific financial aid applications you may want to research. Yes? What did I ask the parents? Yeah, why? Oh, for the parent information, like Well, what they're looking for the parents is the income and the assets. And if they're in school, if the parents are in school, sure, that would make a difference as to what they can afford. Most of the time, they're not going to be. But in terms of the paying for college, the idea is that the family that's the family's responsibility. So they're trying to figure out how much the family can pay. So that's why they want that information. Right. No, that's true. And they'll ask. Oh, yes. They ask about the parents. Sometimes they'll ask about like how much, what the education level of the parent is. That's just for demographic. That's just for research information, basically. Yeah. It doesn't have any bearing on how much aid they're eligible for. Yes. That could affect your chance of being admitted at certain colleges. Colleges can admit students based on anything. You know, I was just talking about this today with somebody that there was a college in Massachusetts that used to be a women's college and then it went co-ed, so they were probably admitting a lot of male students because they wanted male students, and sent scholarships to male students, you know, because they needed male students to fill out their class. They wanted to encourage male students. So colleges can make a decision based on those things on who to admit. At least that's a sort of loaded topic at the moment because I know there's court cases and there's things like that. But it's possible. That stuff should not affect your financial aid, though. It doesn't affect it, like how much when they're looking at how much you can afford to pay for college. All of that is economic information, so income and assets and things like that. And every family goes through the same formula for that. But in terms of admission to college, that's a different thing. I'm going to talk about this really quickly. These are programs that are local programs, mass transfer and tuition break, and they are designed to help students make it through a 4-year degree program with little to no debt. And basically it works like this. Mass transfer is a program where you start off at a 2-year public college, a community college, which is the least expensive option almost always. And you get your 2-year degree called your associate degree. You get that, and then if you're part of the mass transfer program, you can transfer all of those credits into a 4-year public college or university in Massachusetts, and then finish your 4-year degree in 2 years. So all of those credits are guaranteed to transfer over. And there are different levels to it. So if you're making a certain GPA, you might have a guaranteed admission. You might have tuition freeze. You might be rebated your tuition as you move through college. Tuition break is a program through the New England Board of Higher Education, which is, you know, let's say you want to study astronomy, but you want to do it at a public college or university in Massachusetts, so you get a lower tuition. But let's say they don't offer that. So, but another school in New England does. You could attend that school, let's say it's the University of Vermont, and pay a lower rate because your field of study wasn't offered at a public university in Massachusetts. And you don't have to do anything for that program. You'll sort of automatically be shunted into it. Now, in terms of the timeline going forward, we've sort of hinted at this, but next year is the year that you're going to sort of, I'm imagining most of you are sophomores, although some of you I know are juniors. Junior year is the year that this really kicks off in earnest. And so you're going to start to research colleges, though you can do that certainly before your junior year. But now is the time when you want to start getting your letters of recommendation ready. You can make plans to visit campuses and college fairs. You're going to be taking your SATs and ACTs, and you can start writing that college essay in your junior year. The fall of senior year, when you're actually going to have to start to apply to colleges, and colleges are going to have application deadlines, so you can apply to those colleges. You should file your financial aid forms in the fall of your senior year as well. So that FAFSA and that ProFund, those need to be filed. Those can be filed starting October 1st and need to be filed throughout that fall and winter. You can finalize your college essay, or you need to finalize your college essay, and send in all of your applications. So winter senior year is kind of when you're waiting to hear back for the most part, unless you've applied early. But you can, as I said, still submit your grades to the college if that's going to help you be admitted. You can submit, you can apply for scholarships still throughout that time, and you can apply for scholarships even when you're a college student as well. And then you're going to start getting your admissions decisions and your financial aid offers. Probably, assuming that you're applying regular decision, you probably get those probably about the end of March. You'll start getting those, and they should follow closely. So you should get the admissions application, and then right afterwards, the financial aid offer. That's how it usually happens, unless they come together. And then you need to make a deposit by May 1st. So you can do all sorts of things. You can visit open houses. We have another program called How to Pay for College. So when you get your financial aid offers from different colleges, we can help you compare them and see what you owe at each particular college. So if you're interested in that, that's in seminar form and in webinar. So those are going to be available at that time. I've mentioned MIFA Pathway a couple of times. This is our one-stop college and career portal. So this is where you can do college searches. You can keep track of your applications. You can actually apply through this site to college. You can keep track of your letters of recommendation and your essay and create resumes and do career searches as well as college searches. So that's MIFA Pathway. That's for use in high schools as well as individually. So what you can do now, you can start researching your college and creating your college list. You can visit MIFA.org and see all the tools and the sort of calculators that we have. This, again, is our social media information, and I'll just keep this up here a bit and once again mention that podcast that I did with Drew Carter from College of the Holy Cross, because I think that will really help. And if there are any other questions, I am here. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Oh, this it? Okay, sorry. There we go. Well, thank you very much. It's nice to be back, and I know that was a lot that we went through, and I don't expect you to remember all of it, but we are here if you have questions. And I have to get back to you. Yes. Yeah, let me so I can give you my email address. Yeah. I'll actually just, so I'll announce it. It's jhughes@mifa.org. So that's, yep, I'll repeat, I'll spell it out. JHUGHES. Oh, yeah. I'll put it up here. Yeah. Absolutely. And you can always ask Father Santuna. He can ask me. So if you have, so that's me, yeah. I know, it's just, if you want to call too, I can leave you my number, which is, oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, where's the dash on this? Yeah. I forget my work number. Okay, so there it is. And I owe you an answer on the Common App, so I'll get your information soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you to our MIFA program. It's always a blessing to have them with us. A lot of information, but thank God we have the MIFA program. As Jonathan said, it is available for all the students in the state of Massachusetts. And MIFA has been very much involved in the Coptic Church here in Massachusetts, so we're very thankful for all of them. Any questions, Jonathan will stay after to answer questions. And also, I'm available, the high school servants are available, so yeah, if you have multiple resources to help you with your children, guide them towards applying to college. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.